Fantastic Four are coming to the MCU in 2023, and we still don't have a cast yet, despite having John Watts signed on as a director and a release year. Now, these characters haven't exactly been treated the best in the movies. I mean, the first movie they were in was never officially released. The first Tim Story film is probably the best so far, despite not being that great, and the sequel is garbage. The 2015 reboot is almost universally detested, and while I don't hate it as much as others, I can still acknowledge that it's bad. It's pretty bad. But anyway, with this great opportunity to improve these excellent characters, I, the Film Watcher, decided to cast the entire Fantastic Four, as well as Doctor Doom, Galactus, and the Silver Surfer for the MCU. So let's do this. First up, we got Galactus, or as I like to call him, the big boy in space. He's a giant behemoth who walks around space eating plants, not a tornado cloud thingy. So Galactus wouldn't be a main villain, he would be like Starro from the Suicide Squad, except much, much bigger. He's just kind of a huge monster for our heroes to take out. That said, he should still be terrifying, so we need someone with a deep, raspy, powerful voice, as well as someone who can do the motion capture for the character. That said, I went with Jeremy Irons, who has one of my absolute favorite voices of all time. It's deep and powerful and really menacing. He makes every character he plays in every project he's in so much better. He was Alfred in Batman v Superman, and he was one of the few good elements to that complete embarrassment. He also voiced Scar in The Lion King, and he was absolutely chilling, especially in his more menacing moments. He played Simon Peter Gruber in Die Hard with a Vengeance, and he was excellent. He could easily do the mocap here because Galactus doesn't have to do much in terms of movement. He's 6'2", so he's absolutely got the build for it. He'd be a spectacular Galactus. Next up, we have Silver Surfer, Galactus' ward. And he was voiced by Lawrence Fishburne and played by Doug Jones in Rise of the Silver Surfer. So the Surfer has to have this otherworldly feeling and have a strange look about him. Preferably the actor should be lean, but fit. I'd really like to see this character featured in the MCU. Maybe not as the lead in his own film, but as a wild card in the franchise. The Surfer needs to feel almost real and powerful and carry himself above others. The actor also needs to have a really cool voice that stands out. That said, I went with the incredibly Oscar-winning Rami Malek. He gave a phenomenal performance as Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. Thinking about it, his performance very much reminded me of the Silver Surfer. He can have that powerful feeling, cold but warm at the same time. He has that otherworldly, unique voice and lean build required for the character. He'd be a spectacular Silver Surfer. Then there's Dr. Doom. Now, Doom has the opportunity to be one of the best MCU villains, ranking amongst the likes of Thanos, Loki, and Killmonger. They just have to make him interesting, complex, but also menacing and fun. Dr. Doom isn't just a boring businessman or whatever the hell that was in the 2015 movie. He has to be ridiculously intelligent and believable as a crazy scientist. He has to be a mentor and friend to Reed, and I'd like him to be a little bit older than Reed. He should also be deeply arrogant and wrapped up in his own work. The actor needs to play every side of this while also being believable as a physical threat. All that considered, I have what I believe to be the perfect choice, Jason Isaacs. He's been very menacing before, like in the Harry Potter films in which he played Lucius Malfoy, and he was spectacular. He also gave an epic voice performance as Admiral Zhao in Avatar The Last Airbender, and he had that arrogance that Dr. Doom requires. He also played a scientist in Armageddon, which is kind of cool. He's 58, which I think works. He would definitely need to bulk up a little bit for this role, but actors do that all the time. Not to mention, he's just a phenomenal villain actor with a super smarmy persona that he puts on. Getting into the four themselves, we have the Human Torch. It's kind of funny that Chris Evans played this character, and Michael B. Jordan was honestly really good. Now, Human Torch on the surface is the typical arrogant, athletic party boy, but he should mature throughout the course of the franchise. He has to have the journey from a stuck-up teen to a mature and reasonable man, while still keeping his personality intact. The actor should be physically fit, as well as have a very youthful face, so you can buy that he's at least in college. Now, the internet has a couple choices that I've seen. Sam Claflin and Joe Keery popped up a couple times, but there were two actors that showed up very often. One of them is Zac Efron, and while I think he'd be solid, I don't think he's quite out at his high school musical pretty boy phase yet. He has the potential to be a huge star, but he just hasn't really found the right project. The other choice is Dacre Montgomery, and I can't help but agree, he'd be perfect. He can play the arrogant, athletic party boys we saw in Stranger Things, but he can also pull out that arc, the growth that his character would go through. It also has the look for Johnny Storm. Now, he's 26, which means he could absolutely pull off this character's arc, and he could do it really well. Next up is The Thing, who was far and away the hardest to cast. I considered a couple different actors, including Terry Crews, Matthews, Jason Momoa, Ryan Hurst, and John Cena, who I absolutely would have cast if he wasn't continuing to play Peacemaker. Now, David Harbour is perfect, but he was already in Black Widow, so he can't play Ben Grimm, unfortunately. So far, The Thing has fared best in terms of cinematic representation in this one, in my opinion at least. Michael Chiklis was great, and Jamie Bell was pretty excellent too. That said, The Thing is my personal favorite of the Fantastic Four. As a character, he absolutely rocks. See what I did there? Anyway, he has to have a close and long-lasting friendship with Reed. There should be a real sadness to this character because unlike the other members of the team, he can't just look like a regular human at will. You have to really relate to and understand this character. He had a bright future ahead of him with his military career and his romantic life, and although it was kind of taken away from him once he got his powers. He should also be very, very funny. The actor should be able to pull off the sadness of this character's life as well as the comedic timing. The Thing is a wisecracking and sarcastic pile of rocks. The actor should be physically fit, maybe not super shredded, but well-built and strong. This performance would mostly be motion captured, by the way, but still. I went with William Zabka, who is, of course, best known for playing Johnny Lawrence in The Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. As great as he was in the original movie, he was much better in Cobra Kai. He had this kind of sadness about him, as you saw him trying to do the right thing, but often being thwarted either through his own thick-headedness or Daniel LaRusso's interference and pettiness. He can pull off the inner sadness of the Thing, but he also has simply spectacular comedic timing. Every joke he had in Cobra Kai came from him being kind of out of touch with modern life and technology, whether it was saying WebMD instead of WebMD or consistently mocking the appearance of young children. He's 55 right now, which I think is fine for the Thing. He's about 6'0" and did plenty of action in Cobra Kai, so we know he's still physically capable, even though he's not super buff. I think he'd be incredible as the Thing. Next up is Invisible Woman. Personally, I think she's been treated the worst in terms of cinematic representation so far. Jessica Alba is just really boring, and Kate Mara is as bland as physically possible. Anyway, Sue Storm is kind of the heart of the team. Invisible Woman has to be very strong-willed, intelligent, and a brave person, probably the bravest member of the team and the one that's most likely to take action. She has to have romantic chemistry and appropriate frustration with Reed, that brother-sister banter with Johnny, where she looks after him and tells him off for being an idiot. She has to be the one that Ben feels most comfortable confiding in. That said, she's not just an emotional ShamWow for the rest of the team. She has to really lead at certain points. I don't think there should be a designated leader of the Four in this version of these characters. The actors should have a good sense of comedic timing and be able to do action. I'd like someone in their 30s for the character. I considered Amelia Clark, Felicity Jones, Natalie Dormer, and of course, Emily Blunt. You know who I didn't consider? Jennifer Lawrence. Just no. No, that would not be good. Amelia Clark was recently cast for Secret Invasion, so she's unavailable. Natalie Dormer very weirdly had a cameo in First Avenger as some random lady who kisses Steve Rogers. Emily Blunt is out of talks for the role, plus I wanted to give my own choice. Felicity Jones is a viable option, but I prefer the actress I picked. And that actress is Annie Murphy. She was hilarious in Schitt's Creek and was probably the funniest character in the show. She also had some great emotional moments. By the end of the series, she'd really come into her own as a character and became one with depth and insanity. She also recently starred in Kevin Can F Himself, and she was absolutely incredible. She played a woman trapped in a mediocre lifestyle who attempts to take control of her own life, and she did it expertly. I've only recently discovered her as an actress, like earlier this year, and man, do I wish I'd done that sooner. She's incredibly talented and would be fantastic in this role. And she bears some resemblance to Dacre Montgomery, and you could easily buy them as brother and sister. She's 5'7" and 34, which works for the Invisible Woman. I'm sure she would be fantastic in this role. Get it? I said fantastic, like kind of like the Fantastic Four. You get it? Okay. And finally, we have Reed Richards himself, Mr. Fantastic. Now, I think Ewan Grufford was fine, if a little bland in the role, and Miles Teller was honestly really, really good. The idea of casting Andrew Neiman from Whiplash as Reed Richards is literally perfect. Anyway, Mr. Fantastic is an extremely intelligent individual. However, he can be arrogant. He gets wrapped up in his own work and stuck in his own head, often forgetting to live life. He has a bit of an ego and has to be a little bit unlikable as a result, and a similar way to Tony Stark, but very different as well. Reed also feels a devotion to humanity. He wants to make big scientific advancements, and he works harder than anyone. You have to buy him as the leader of this surrogate family, as well as someone who can step into action when necessary. I, like everyone in the known universe, consider John Krasinski. Since Emily Blunt is out of the talks for family reasons, I'd assume Krasinski would be out of the running as well, though. The both of them would be excellent, but if they're out of talks, they're out of talks. It's unfortunate. A couple other names I had in mind for the role included William Jackson Harper, Eddie Redmayne, Milo Ventimiglia, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Harper would be great, but I don't know if he could do the leadership thing, nor do I know if he has any experience in action. Redmayne would be spectacular in most ways, but I don't feel like he can do the arrogant side of the character. The guy's just too likable. I haven't seen Ventimiglia enough to be a good judge. I should probably watch all of This Is Us before I make a decision on him. Gordon-Levitt, again, is just too likable of a dude. I think that Benedict Cumberbatch would be fantastic, but he's already Doctor Strange, and he's amazing in that role. That said, I went with Daniel Day Kim. He is a great and highly underrated actor. Honestly, I feel like he always brings his all, even though some of the stuff he's been in isn't that great. He played a character with a bit of emotional distance, but still extremely intelligent and stowaway. He was phenomenal in that film, despite the ending being just way too ambiguous for me. He also voiced Hiroshi Sato in The Legend of Korra and General Fong in one episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. In both of those, he voiced pretty well-intentioned characters that just had terrible methods. In fact, he recently did a voice in Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon, and despite that movie being shockingly forgettable, I remember him doing a pretty good job at it. He's 53, but doesn't really look like it. Pretty muscular and fit, and 5'9", which is a little too short for the role, but still, he'd be incredible as Mr. Fantastic. And that's it. Give your own choices for these characters down below. Like this video, subscribe for more in its ilk. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, remember to keep calm and watch on.